The purpose of convening this special meeting, and I thank my fellow members for setting aside the time, is so that we can have a meeting to discuss for a discussion that ideally we would have had before the first meeting of our superintendent search committee on Tuesday. As co-chairs, mapping out the overarching process for updating the school committee and our community, Emily and I would have come before you during the school committee meeting that was scheduled for this Monday. However, that meeting was rescheduled to Thursday to accommodate a presentation by the mayor to our city hall. Moving the meeting, which I was happy to do, removed our window to provide this committee with a high-level overview of the search process, to have our consultants be introduced to the committee, and to discuss the composition of our search committee. Additionally, we wanted to provide you with an opportunity to ask very important questions that we are sure that you have. I assure you that that was indeed our plan, but you know what they say about the best laid plans. And I have to admit that this process hasn't been seamless, but I didn't expect it to be. It can't be seamless, not when this is a new process for everyone involved, outside of our consultants, that is. So while it's not a perfect process, it is an iterative one, and one that we are looking to continuously improve. One of those improvements involves listening to our community. Throughout the week, Emily and I have heard from a lot of folks who are concerned that their voices are not reflected within the makeup of the search committee. We've listened and we've acknowledged that we need more voices to balance the perspectives of the search. Therefore, Emily and I have made the decision to make a modest expansion of the search committee by including 2 additional parents who had previously submitted statements of interest to join the search committee. We've already contacted those individuals and are waiting for confirmation from both. Once we have that confirmation, we will update the school community and the school committee, and we will do that next week. Next, many of you have had a chance to review the materials that were sent out earlier. You may not have had a chance to review them at all, but that's okay, because what we really wanted was for you to meet our consultants from Hazard Young, Attia and Associates, HYA, lead consultant Aresta Johnson, and her associate Jeff Melendez. So Aresta and Jeff have graciously agreed to join us on rather short notice for this special meeting to introduce themselves to you and to give you an overview of this superintendent search process. So in a minute, I will turn it over to them, but later in the meeting, we will be asking the school committee to authorize a few categories of expenses related to the search. So right now, I'd like to turn to Aresta and to Jeff and invite you to introduce yourselves to the rest of the school committee, the Newton School Committee. And there's our mayor.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Aresta Johnson. Just a bit about my background. I'm a former chemist, started as a substitute teacher because I became a mom. I thought I would live in that world until my son entered kindergarten. He just turned 30 this summer. So I hung around in education much longer than I had initially anticipated, fell in love with it, worked my way through classroom teacher all the way up to the superintendency. I'm now in higher education. I'm a dean at Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia. And it's a pleasure to meet all of you lovely folks from Newton. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to meet you as well. My name is Jeff Melendez. I've been in education for the last 25 years. The prior 6 years as a superintendent in Connecticut of a very small district. I've been an adjunct professor at Teachers College, Columbia University for about 10 years or so. And I am really excited to work with you all on this very important task of selecting a new superintendent.
So I think before we open it up to questions from the members, I think what would be really helpful, Jeff and Aresta, if you could talk to us about just the 1,000-foot away view, superintendent search, the search committee and the school committee. Talk to us about who's charge it is we're in right now, where the school committee comes in and map it out for us kind of in the overarching framework.
Sure. I will begin just by naming the 4 phases, and then I'll change hands and pass it on to Jeff to I'll go a little bit deeper in the 4 phases of our search. First thing that we really want to do is engage the community, engage the search committee, engage the school committee, engage all stakeholders that are important to this process, including the students. And then we're going to actively recruit for the right candidate, not just any candidate, but we want the right candidate. And we do that by developing a leadership profile. And then the 3rd phase will go into selection. And lastly is transition. And I'm just going to hand it over to Jeff to see if he'd like to go a little bit deeper into each of those phases before we move forward.
Sure, I can add a little bit. I would say that, you know, the first part about engagement is really the opportunity for us as your consultants to really understand what it is that you see as critical in the needs of a new superintendent. What it gives us the opportunity to do personal interviews with individual people. It allows us to do focus groups, and it allows us to really review a survey, review the results of a survey that every stakeholder in your community can take the time to fill out, and we will be reviewing that very carefully, and we'll create a leadership profile. Now, leadership profile is basically going to be a metric, a tool that we'll use to move into the next round, which is recruiting. So, you know, we look at this as a really important time for us to hear what your needs are, what your desires are. We realize that every stakeholder is going to have a different set of criteria potentially, but our job is to sort of help the district determine what the best qualities are in a candidate that you desire.
And now when we talk about the search committee versus the school committee, first, let me begin by sharing what my role and Jeff's role will be. We will get many applicants, and I'll use the number 40 as a rough estimate. We may get 40 applicants. Jeff and I will go through all of those applicants, and from those applications that we receive and the CVs that come in, Jeff and I will vet those candidates for you. Once we vet the candidates out of those 40, we will then present 8 to 10 high caliber and high quality candidates to the search committee. We will present a digital examination of those 8 to 10 candidates. That is the list that HYA has vetted for you and wants to bring to your school community. After we have shared that in the vetting process with the search committee, we will share their application, resume. We will also share what references say. We'll share their letter of interest. And the 5th document that we share is an introductory letter that each of the candidates will put together. And that is the 8 to 10 screen that we will bring to the search committee. If the search committee decides, well, you know, I see Jane Doe was one of those 40 applicants, but Jane Doe is not on your slate. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? We share all 40 applicants, and we also share why we decided to put them on the slate as opposed to why not. If the search committee then decides, well, we still think Jane Doe is a great applicant, we'd like to have her added to the slate, we will then add that individual to the slate, because this is your search. This is not HYA's search. It's not Arresta's or Jeff. So we want you all to be comfortable with that. Once we presented that to the search committee would then interview that slate, that 8 to 10 candidates that we bring forward, including Jane Doe, if they decide to add her to the slate. We would set up 1st round interviews, and they would dwindle that list down to 3 to 4 finalists. The search committee role then ends at that point. The second part of that is those 3 to 4 candidates would then be interviewed by the school committee. The school committee would interview those individuals. They'll have a presentation that they'll present to you, 10 to 15 minute PowerPoint presentation. You'll be able to ask them questions, open-ended questions, but we also develop a script to help walk you through that process. We will then use something called the matrix to help you dwindle that down into one finalist that you really have fallen in love with and see as the ideal candidate for the superintendency. And ultimately, the school committee would reconvene and vote on that finalist. So that is the difference between search versus school. The search committee helps to vet and get it down to 3 to 4 great finalists, and we hand it over to the school committee to make that final determination after they've had a chance to interview those individuals.
The only other thing I'd just like to add to Aresta's comments is about recruitment. We at HYA don't just simply post this position and sit by passively as people apply. We utilize our networks and the decades of experience that we've had in the field, particularly in the Northeast, to look for candidates that we know that might fit the criteria that you've established. We also have really a nationwide network through HYA because of all the associates that are part of this, and we share amongst each other positions and are often seeking each other for recommendations for people that meet that specific criteria.
Thank you, Jeff. That's a great point. And just one other metric I do want to share. We get about 25,000 hits on our website each day of HYA. So there are folks that will come to our website because we post all vacancies, whether we're conducting the search or not. If there's a superintendent vacancy in Omaha and we did not get that assignment, we still post that on the HYA website because it brings enormous foot traffic to our website. Tamika, I'll pass it back to you and Emily.
Thanks, Aresta. So I think at this point, let's open it up to questions from the members, because I know you've probably got quite a few that you'd like to run by Jeff and Aresta. So we'll pause here for your questions on the process, overview that Aresta and Jeff have just kind of given you, and then we'll take it from there. So if you have a question, just hold up a hand or a virtual hand and I will recognize you. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Tamika. Thanks for organizing this meeting, and thanks to Aresta and Jeff for coming. I think, Tamika, you didn't give yourself enough credit because many months ago, you arranged for a workshop, a training session between the school committee and Glenn Kuchar, the head of the Mass Association of School Committees. And he presented us with an outline of some of the issues we face. And he presented us with a document called Key Decisions for the Newton School Committee, which I think was very helpful and outlined some of the issues we face. And Jeff and Aresta, thank you for outlining the logistics of the various steps of a search process, which I think in themselves are straightforward. And your mention of the leadership profile and the importance of that profile in communicating the district's priorities with regard to the kind of leader we're seeking, I think raised in my mind, raises the importance of that profile. And it seems to me that while you talked about some of the responsibilities of the search committee and the school committee, I don't think we've properly addressed the full responsibilities of the school committee. And this is a point I've been making for several months. And Madam Chair, I move that prior to the final public release of any leadership profile or any other statement of qualifications, that the documents be presented to the school committee for review, possible amendment, and final approval. I'm happy to put that motion in the chat for people to read.
So I suppose at this point, if there is a second, we will entertain that and then open it up for discussion. Is there a second on the motion that Paul has, thank you for putting that in the chat, that Paul has moved?
I'll second that.
So we have a second from Chris on the motion, rereading the motion for everyone. The motion is that prior to the final public release of any leadership profile or other statement of qualifications, that the documents be presented to the school committee for review, possible amendment, and final approval. Now, we will, having understood the motion before us, let's open it up for discussion. Any thoughts? Paul, it was your motion and likely you have thoughts. However, I'm going to ask you to hold
Okay,
so that we can hear from some of the other folks.
sure thing. Thank you.
And actually, I wonder if before COVID, with your indulgence, I wonder if we can turn to Jeff and Aresta first. You are our expert consultants that we are paying a significant amount of money to hear your guidance and factor that in through the process. How would you, what would you advise us at this point? How would you characterize the leadership profile? How should we as a school committee be thinking of that, that tool?
So that's a great point that Mr. Levy brought up, because we will not publish anything prior to you all being pleased with it. We would definitely take it to the search committee. However, adding another layer for the school committee, when we take these documents, when we compile the leadership profile and the desired characteristics, before we post that anywhere, we bring that to the committee and we allow any edits, modifications, etc. So that is definitely a plan of ours to bring to the search committee. However, adding another layer for the school committee, that is fine as well. So that is our typical process. We don't want to post anything and make anything public unless we have the approval of Newton.
And talk to us a little bit about the leadership profile itself. What does that look like? I know you sent a couple of samples for the members to have and digest, and I thank you for that, but they might not have had the time to digest. So just how would you describe the leadership profile and what is it as a document?
I can share my screen as well. Well, the leadership
Sure.
profile is really a synthesis of everything that we collected from the stakeholders. So inside of that leadership profile, you will see a qualitative assessment of the district, highlighting the strengths and areas for improvement as well, based upon everything that Jeff and I are able to collect in those interviews and in the forums. There's also a quantitative piece because we have the survey. So we include that as well in the leadership profile. The second document that we have is listed as the desired characteristics, because we will ask everyone that's involved in this process, what type of attributes are you looking for in the next superintendent? And that question will help drive the development of the desired characteristics. So I'm going to just share my screen. I have two that I did share with you. I have Paterson, New Jersey, and I also have Anne Arundel County, Maryland. So just bear with me while I share my screen. That's my new granddaughter you saw. She was born in July. So as you see, I'm very proud of that.
She's lovely.
So this is our Paterson leadership profile for New Jersey. And so we give the history of the school district, and we basically pull this information directly from your website, what you had to say about your particular district. And then we will highlight some of the strengths of the district. And I'm going to just scroll through. In Paterson's case, they had a very rich and robust IB program. Folks were really proud of that. They were really proud of the diversity efforts they had put in place, et cetera. And some of the challenges that we lifted when we were with Paterson, they talked about the post-pandemic ramifications, the infrastructure, some cultural challenges within Paterson. And so we highlight that in the leadership profile. And then if you look quickly in this section here, you'll see some of the data points that were captured from the survey. So we include those in the narrative as well. And then I'll just scroll down. We have our conclusion there. And then we also include in the leadership profile the participation. We list how many folks participated. In Patterson's case, they had quite a few stakeholder groups, and we list all of their participants. As you can see with the teacher group, there were 76 teachers that participated in the forum. None of the teachers were listed in the online survey, however. And for parent and guardians, we had 48 parents in focus groups, but 330 parents participated in the online survey. So those are some of the quantitative pieces that we would put into this document. And then here in the same leadership profile, again, the survey summary is just lifted to your attention. In this case, facilities are well maintained. That was at 19%. So we list what was rated least favorable so that Patterson would be able to take a look at that. And the new incoming superintendent also can use this document to help guide the work that they will have to undertake as a new superintendent in Newton. And again, this is a summary of comments from all of those stakeholder groups. We asked each group the same 5 questions here. Some of the challenges, some of the strengths, and what are the 3 to 5 most desired characteristics that they'd like to see. And in a longer document that we give for you for internal use, we provide every response that they gave to those 5 questions. So we give you a public document similar to the one I showed you for Patterson. However, we also give you an internal document that will list everything each member had to say. And I'll pause for any questions.